Hello everyone. This is the fifth surgical interaction regarding the esophagus. In the previous interaction, we have discussed gastroesophageal reflux disease along with the medical management of gastroesophageal reflux disease. Now in this interaction, we are having two parts. The part A consists of surgical management of GORD and part B it consists of complications of GORD, and in this part B we will discuss regarding the Barrett's esophagus also. Now let's start with the surgical treatments available in gastroesophageal reflux disease. Most of the time in GORD, especially in uncomplicated GORD, the indication for surgery, it depends upon the patient choice. If he is not responding on proton pump inhibitors, or he or she is not interested for long-term proton pump inhibitor intake, he or she can decide for surgical intervention. There are few risks if we are opting for surgical intervention in these type of patients, especially in uncomplicated GORD. A small mortality rate of 0.1 to 0.5% is there. If the patient is having comorbid condition along with GORD, especially this mortality is usually seen in these patients with other comorbid diseases, hypertensive patients, cardiovascular diseases are there. Another important thing regarding this surgery in uncomplicated GORD, 5 to 10% cases they require a redo surgery or revision surgery is required. The primary surgery failed. Difficult to explain this thing to the patient. So again, we can consider it as a risk, especially if we are planning for any surgical intervention in uncomplicated GORD. In uncomplicated GORD, few of the side effects in the post-operative period, like short-term dysphagia, that is difficulty in swallowing, the gas bloat, or abdominal discomfort, these three things and other associated side effects can be seen in roughly around 10% of patients. Now, as of now, whatever surgical techniques are there, around 90% of the patients they are satisfied with the results we are having with anti-reflux operations. There are many anti-reflux operations we'll discuss later on in this interaction itself. Now here you can say what are the reasons for failure on a proton pump inhibitor. Basically this proton pump inhibitor is a standard treatment for medical management of GORD, but what could be the possible reasons for failure? And few of the reasons for failure could be an indication for surgical intervention. So let's go one by one. The reasons for failure on a PPI could be volume reflux is there, large amount of volume is there, recurrent and large volume is there. A very good indication for surgery. Patient usually will not benefit only on proton pump inhibitors. So one of the anti-reflux procedure is required in this indication volume reflux. Most of us usually we don't want any deviation from our lifestyle. So a hermit lifestyle with least deviation again will not benefit only on PPI, and these type of patients again a good surgical candidate. If there is psychological distress is there with even minor symptoms patient is not tolerating, this third point, these type of patients should not be selected for any surgical intervention. Why? Because the results, they will be surely dissatisfied with the surgical results. Why? Because even in the preoperative period there is some psychological distress component is there even for minor symptoms. So these type of patients will not be satisfied with our end result. So don't take these patients for surgical intervention. If patient is on proton pump inhibitors, but due to some side effects or due to long term intake of proton pump inhibitors, patient is not satisfied with medical management, poor compliance is there, again it could be a good indication for surgery. If due to some other reasons patient is having poor compliance, don't select the patient for surgery. It's a bad indication. And finally, one of the reasons for failure on a proton pump inhibitor could be the diagnosis is wrong. We have misdiagnosed the patient as a case of gastroesophageal reflux disease. So in this case, other differential diagnosis should be taken care of. Now, before going through the various operations available for management of gastroesophageal reflux disease, let's go through the basic principle. All the operations for GORD, they must give a solution for these three components. The first one, in all the operation, there should be creation of an intra-abdominal segment of esophagus. We must create a length of esophagus that is lying intra-abdominally after dissection in the mediastinal area. Second, crural repair should be done. The diaphragm, the right and left crura, they should be repaired as and when required. And finally, some form of wrapping of the upper stomach should be done, and this is known as fundoplication. And this wrapping of the upper stomach should be around the intra-abdominal part of esophagus, what we have created in the first basic principle. So all these three basic principles are important in all the operations done for GORD. And any operation that is not taking care of all the three components, that particular operation or technique will have inferior success rates. And all these anti-reflux operations, they were basically discovered during 1950s. They were developed, and as far as which one is superior, actually when performed correctly, all are effective operation. However, any randomized controlled trial, they are not showing a clear-cut advantage for any one operation over the others. It depends on the patient selection. Now let's go through the different variety of operations available for GORD. Basically, you just try to understand there are two types of, broadly, there are two types of fundoplication. The total fundoplication and the partial fundoplication. And if we can basically just to enumerate the different surgical treatments what we have done in the last say 60 years, There was first Allison repair, not done nowadays, followed by fundoplication, then Hill's repair, then Berkeley's type 4 operations are there. So out of these different operations, what I have named, just named, we are discussing the fundoplication, the second one, commonly done nowadays. Now in this fundoplication, we are having broadly two types, the total fundoplication and partial fundoplication. The example of total fundoplication is Nissen's fundoplication. Not done nowadays. Not done. Nissen's fundoplication. Very rarely required. Another one is partial fundoplication. Example, Toupet fundoplication and Dorr fundoplication, and so on. We'll discuss one by one the basic points. So let's start with the total fundoplication, the Nissen's fundoplication also known as. This type of operative procedure for GORD is usually associated with, there are some side effects and short-term dysphagia is there. But the advantage is it's most durable repair in terms of long-term reflex control. Although it is associated with some problems, and the most important problem with Nissen's fundoplication, the disadvantage is the creation of an overcompetent cardia. We have increased the tone there and leading to gas bloat syndrome. In this gas bloat syndrome, it's a side effect in the post-operative period, Nissen's fundoplication. Belching is impossible to belch for the patient. What happens in this gas bloat syndrome is the stomach fills with air after every small meals. Patient usually passes excessive flatus. Although this gas bloat syndrome, usually it does not occur with partial fundoplication methods. Another method of overcoming this gas bloat syndrome is to do or go for floppy Nissen's technique. It's a modification over Nissen's fundoplication known as floppy Nissen technique. What we are going to do here, the fundoplication is kept short in length. Short length we are going to make, and it is loose around the esophagus. By doing these two things or adopting floppy Nissen technique, we can avoid this post-operative problem, gas bloat syndrome. In classical, the total fundoplication, Nissen's fundoplication, this gas bloat syndrome, even after 3 months or more of surgery, does not resolve. Although other short-term side effects gone within 3 months, but this is the only problem, the basic, most important problem, that is persisting even after 3 months after total fundoplication. What is the solution? Just redo surgery. Revision surgery is required, and just convert the total fundoplication with a partial fundoplication. This is the treatment of this gas bloat syndrome. Now next is partial fundoplication. Now if we are wrapping the stomach over the lower esophageal portion, the intra-abdominal length, and we are taking the stomach wrap from posterior aspect of the esophagus, this is known as Toupet partial fundoplication. And if the same wrap we are taking from the anterior side, anterior to the lower esophagus, and just stitching behind posteriorly, that is, the example is Dorr partial fundoplication or Watson partial fundoplication. What is the advantage of partial fundoplication over total one? fewer short-term side effects are there. What is the disadvantage? Slightly higher long-term failure rate when compared to total fundoplication. But there is no gas bloat syndrome in partial fundoplication. So these are the operations preferred nowadays, partial fundoplication. Here you can see the total fundoplication, the diagram. You can see the Nissen. There is no gap between the two ends of the wrap, on the right side and the left side of the esophagus. You can see here. There is no gap. And in Toupet partial fundoplication, there is a gap here. In this Toupet partial fundoplication, the stomach wrap is coming from the posterior aspect of the esophagus and is stitched anteriorly, leaving a strip of esophageal tissue here. There is no gas bloat syndrome in partial fundoplication. In the post-operative period, for most of the patients, recurrent reflux is there. If the symptom of recurrent reflux is there, it means the surgical failure, the anatomical repair failure is there. And for these type of patient, the only solution is we will have to go for another surgery, the revisional fundoplication. Why we want to go for this? Obviously, our aim is to correct the recurrent reflux so that patient becomes asymptomatic, and we want to avoid the unacceptable side effects of the first surgery or the failure of that particular primary surgery. So revision of the surgery is required in case of anatomical failure. In revisional surgery, there are two problems. There is lower chance of success, and sometimes due to previous surgery, the local revision is technically impossible. We cannot go for partial conversion from total to partial fundoplication, or previously partial fundoplication we have done, again another partial fundoplication is not possible technically. Then what to do? Then the final operation what we can go for, that is known as partial gastrectomy with a Roux-en-Y reconstruction. We are going to excise a part of stomach with Roux-en-Y reconstruction. Now, how it is going to help? This particular surgery, in complicated cases, it is going to reduce the gastric acid secretion. We have removed some part of stomach, and it is going to divert the bile and pancreatic secretions away from the stomach because of Roux-en-Y reconstruction. So these are the two important things this revisional surgery is going to do. And so it is less damaging because of less of potential reflux volume is there. It is reduced. The size of the stomach reduced. So volume of the potential reflux, again, it is less. So this is going to help our patient. And due to diversion of the juices in bile, the pancreatic juice and bile, the changed composition is there. Again, this changed composition of reflux, it is less damaging for the esophageal mucosa. Previously, whether to go for thoracic approach or through the abdomen, this was a major debate previously. But after the introduction of minimal access surgery, the laparoscopic surgery, now most of the anti-reflux operations, they are now done with this approach, the minimal access approach. In the minimal access approach, the laparoscopic surgery, we are having 5 laparoscopic ports in surgical management of GORD. You can see in this diagram, there are 5 laparoscopic ports. The first is in between the xiphisternum and the umbilicus in the midline, the midway. You can see. The second, just below the xiphisternum, you can see here. Third, the right subcostal area. And fourth and fifth in the left subcostal area. These are the 5 laparoscopic port, and out of these, usually the first port is a telescopic port through which we can introduce a telescope and we can see the intra-abdominal organs. Now in laparoscopic fundoplication, the 5 ports already told you they are required, especially in the upper abdomen. And what we are going to do in this laparoscopic fundoplication, or say fundoplication, the cardia and the lower esophagus, we are going to separate it from the diaphragmatic opening, and we are going to mobilize the appropriate length. The first principle what we have discussed, the appropriate length of intra-abdominal esophagus should be maintained after dissection in the mediastinum. And for this, even if it is required, we can divide the short gastric vessels. So fundus can be mobilized after dividing these short gastric vessels. I hope you all know the short gastric branches, these vessels they come from, you all know. The hiatus, then we are going to narrow it, the opening, by placing the sutures behind the esophagus. And in total fundoplication, that is nascence, the fundus is drawn behind the esophagus and then sutured to itself in front of esophagus, as I have already explained to you the difference between the total and partial fundoplication. This already we have discussed. In Toupet partial fundoplication, fundus is drawn from behind and sutured anteriorly, leaving a strip of exposed esophagus at the front. This is Toupet partial fundoplication. In Dor, the fundus is drawn in front of the esophagus and sutured at the back. This is Dor partial fundoplication. The various operations for the surgical correction of GORD. Quickly, just again enumerating the Allison repair of hiatus hernia, as hiatus hernia is usually associated with GORD. This is usually not effective, so not used now. The fundoplication, various types we have discussed, very commonly used nowadays. The laparoscopic route is preferred. The Hill procedure, in this case, we just repair the diaphragmatic hiatus also to narrow it, along with the work over this gastroesophageal junction area. Then Belsey Mark 4th operation, again we are just joining the fundus with the lower esophagus. These are the other operations, but the most commonly done operation is laparoscopic partial fundoplication. This is the most preferable operation done for GORD nowadays with good results. Just to summarize the gastroesophageal reflux disease, what we have discussed in this lecture and in the previous interaction also. Very quickly we are going through this. The summary of GORD. It occurs due to loss of competence of lower esophageal sphincter, very common, associated with hiatus hernia. Sliding type, common, and rolling paraesophageal type, less commonly associated with GORD. Most common symptoms, triad, you remember. The heartburn, the epigastric discomfort and regurgitation. And these symptoms, they made worse by stooping and lying. Differential diagnosis, achalasia and GORD. Dysphagia usually present, but in both the cases, the neoplasm must be excluded. On clinical ground, we can diagnose according to the decision of special investigation and further treatment can be done. The endoscopy is usually required and 24-hour pH is the gold standard. Management primarily medical, proton pump inhibitors, most effective drug. Surgery wherever indicated. The laparoscopic fundoplication, especially the partial one, is the most popular technique. And even after repair or the left out cases, the stricture may develop over a time period along with other complications of GORD if not attended with a surgical intervention. So thank you for this interaction. In the next interaction, we are going to discuss the complications of GORD, including the Barrett's esophagus. So let's go to the part B.